Hello, everyone. A quick check before we start with the webinar. All of you are able to see me, you are able to hear me, and you are able to see my screen. A quick yes on the chat box, please. Hello, everyone. A quick check before we start. Wonderful, thank you. All of you are able to great. See me, you are able to hear me, and you are able to see my screen. That's wonderful. Quick yes on the chat. Thank you so much for all the yeses. That's all that. Hello, everyone. A quick check. Is needed to start with the webinar. And today is a very interesting topic. It's about magic of matrix. So we'll try learning more in terms of how matrix drive HR analytics. Thank you everyone for registering for this webinar and being here. Some ground rules before I start. This webinar will be for an hour. At end of an hour, I'll leave the floor open for questioning. All your questions related with the topic or any inputs, any doubts that you have, you can always go about asking in the Q&A box. A lot of times chat box, I'm not able to keep a track of as there are a lot of messages in there. The Q&A box we can use for answering all your doubts, all your queries, all your questions. So towards the end of the webinar, we would use the Q&A box for communication. Now during the webinar, in between, I'll ask for a quick yes to check if you're able to see me, if you're able to hear me, if you're able to see my screen, so that I know everything is going fine and the webinar can continue, right? So also for people who are watching us live on Facebook, or sometimes when people log out, rooms being full, they have difficulty logging back in, they can go about watching this webinar live on facebook.com/CHRMP. However, it's always good to be here. You can also like our Facebook page, also follow our YouTube channel and LinkedIn page for a lot of updates, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of articles, a lot of blogs and human resource that we otherwise share, right? Anybody who's watching on Facebook live can go about starting a broadcast or a watch party or share in the groups that they like. We should spread learning, and that is what is advisable. Great. So with this, let's quickly start with the webinar for today. This webinar is brought to you by CHRMP. CHRMP stands for Certified Human Resource Management Professional. CHRMP is a premier HR certification which is globally recognized. CHRMP is a competency-based certification, and this is something which is very, very important to understand, because I mean you understand that a lot of departments have been changing names. Recruitment is becoming talent acquisition, and training and development is becoming talent development or learning and development. There is a reason for that, and the reason is for following competency-based practices. So CHRMP briefs you on these practices. CHRMP has CHRMP certification can be taken in 5,600 test centers in 190 countries. Certification partner is Pearson VUE. And we are talking about more than 10,000 strong alumni base, right? Just go to LinkedIn, click on CHRMP or type in CHRMP. You would be able to see people in different parts of the globe at different designations who are CHRMPians, right from HR directors to VP HRs to HR VPs to HR executives to HR analysts. You would be able to find a lot of CHRMPians across the globe. My name is Animesh Rai. I come with 17 years of experience in human resource management. I have consulted number of Fortune 10, Fortune 500 companies in terms of setting up their HR processes, conducting HR audits, planning HR analytics, training their teams. I would like to, I would be the lead facilitator for today and would be helping you through this journey of understanding what magic of matrix is all about, right? Wonderful. One thing that I promise you is that by end of this webinar, you would have a complete know-how of how metrics get applied to drive business decisions. So this is very interesting because when we talk about metrics, it is something that is very unique, and it's one of the most tangible aspects in HR analytics that you go about seeing. So we would be exploring this in times to come in next 1 hour. And what I need in return from all of you is your complete attention. I would want you to follow each and every slide, and this is because we are talking about too less a time and too much of content that we are going to discuss. So just be away from any distractions for an hour, and I'll make sure that this 1 hour counts. You have very good understanding of what analytics and what metrics can do in analytics. Also, people who stay till the end of the webinar, I have a small surprise for them. So that is something that we would be talking on. So great, let's then start. And I always start my HR analytics webinar by busting some myths, right? And this is because a lot of HR professionals that I interact with, I see that a lot of them have one or the other concern when it comes to approaching HR analytics, and there is some kind of apprehension, some kind of fear. HR analytics is a wonderful field, and I would want to burst this myth so that HR professionals find this field more interesting, more approachable. Now, when we talk about myth number one is HR analytics is for people who are good with mathematics, right? And a lot of times the moment the term analytics comes into picture, we always start thinking of aptitude and logical ability, and we start thinking of mathematics, and there is fear of numbers in a lot of human resource professionals because people have been good with handling people and interaction and other elements, but when it comes to maths, a lot of HRs find themselves weak. So the good part and the good news is that you do not require crazy mathematics in HR analytics. So when we talk about mathematics, it can be huge, right? From basic arithmetic to basic statistics to high-end statistics to permutation combination to linear equation to one variable to trigonometry to high-end geometries to calculus in terms of sine theta, cosec theta, tan theta, etc. Integration, differentiation. No, we are not talking about most of it. Largely, HR analytics, when it comes to mathematics, is about basic arithmetic and basic statistics. It is not about permutation combination. It is not about linear equation in two variable and complex equations, and it's not about permutation, your integration and differentiation and sine theta and cosec theta. No, it's not. So most of the mathematics that it talks about is something that you know of, right? And unlike being in school where we were not allowed calculators and tools, you have all the freedom to use anything, right? So there is no need to fear this vertical, this domain, because if you're not good at maths, right? I think it's basic arithmetic and basic statistics, something that you would find yourself in your comfort zone while doing it. And this is inputs of a lot of HR professionals who have successfully tried analytics in their respective verticals, right? The second myth that I would like to burst is that you need to have understanding of programming when it comes to understanding human resource analytics, right? Now, please understand that 10 years back, 12 years back, when HR analytics was initially visualized by organizations, it was the business functions, the operations, the software guys, and who were driving HR analytics, right? And when organization thought so that, okay, these guys are already good with these elements, why not trust them with human resource data? Largely they were mistaken, because a lot of times data did not lead to good decisions, the whole purpose of doing analytics, right? So HR professionals are not doing analytics, and organizations are not expecting them to do programming. Let's understand that, right? So you don't need Java and .NET and C++ or other languages to program on. You do need technology. Technology is there everywhere, but your technology is largely restricted to data visualization tools like Power BI or Tableau, for example. And these tools are not very difficult to use. So this, again, apprehension in terms of you need to know programming is something which definitely needs to be busted when it comes to HR analytics, right? Now, myth number 3 is that HR analytics is important and there is something that's happening and it's a buzzword, etc. But how is it relevant to my current role? I mean, I'm doing what I'm doing. If I'm a recruiter, I'm recruiting. And if I'm an ER guy, I'm doing employee relations. And if I'm a performance management or a comp and ben guy, I'm doing what I'm doing, right? So let me tell you this, that there is lots that's happening in HR analytics and in the domain of HR. For example, we do a lot of training with organizations and we look at upskilling their HR teams on analytical skills, right? Now, this is a very important statement. We look at upskilling their HR teams on analytical skills. Now, why are best of companies looking at doing that? Because we are training for best of organizations and upskilling their teams, right? The folks that we are training are not necessarily HR analytics folks. We are talking about people from different verticals and different domains in HR. So we have talent acquisition folks who are attending this. We have L&D folks who are attending this. We have employees from the comp and ben department who are attending this, and we have associates from performance management and HR operations who are attending this. Now, organizations are aiming at implementing analytics in whichever way possible, right? Now, there are 2 ways of doing it. A lot of organizations of bigger size are looking at creating a separate HR COE. So just like how your L&D department is or talent acquisition department is, there would be an HR analytics department which would drive HR analytics within the organization. A lot of them are looking at implementing analytics within the verticals that is there. So whether it's talent acquisition or performance management, or best of organizations in this world or HR business partner would want their HR professionals and their employees who are in the HR department to have this knowledge of HR analytics to be able to do that. So a lot of times when you feel that, okay, am I doing what HR analytics entails? So let me tell you that if you're not doing, then there are a lot of companies which are doing really well and really good, and the dream companies that people are aiming at working with, and HRs there are well versed or being, as I talk, being upskilled in terms of handling analytics, right? There is a lot of data on it. Some data suggests 7 out of 10 HR roles in next 5 years would have analytics as part of their role. There is a lot of other data which suggests that analytics would not be restricted to a vertical itself. So it would definitely be a hiring criteria by the best of organizations when it comes to getting manpower for their respective HR teams, right? So living by this perception that what I'm doing is fine, I would feel that you can move up in your career by having this knowledge of HR analytics, which is very, very important, right? So wonderful. So these 3 myths are very important to burst, and I thought I'll just quickly burst that so that you do not have apprehensions about HR analytics as a vertical. And now let's quickly talk about another very important element, which is analysis versus analytics, right? And whenever I talk about analysis versus analytics, it is because you need to have this understanding and you need to have this clarity that analysis and analytics are 2 different things, right? Analysis is about looking backwards in historical data, right? And looking at what has already happened, right? Whereas analytics is about predicting what will happen next, right? So analysis is largely about visiting in the past, describing what has happened, diagnosing why it happened, etc. And then based on this what and why, you look at predicting what will happen next, right? Or if you want something to happen, then what should be done for it to happen, right? So right from not only predicting, but also prescribing a solution is something that analytics does. And it does interact with analysis data. It's not that it's not interacting, but it's important to look at history of what has happened to be able to predict. For example, if we are talking about attrition rate, then looking at what has happened in the last year in terms of attrition can help you predict what would the attrition be like this year. If no extra efforts have been made, no policy changes have been made, no employee initiatives have been done, no compensation initiatives have been done, no benefits initiatives have been done, you can expect the same amount, almost the same attrition rate this year. And if the organization wants the attrition rate to reduce, then analytics should also be able to tell the business that if you do A, then you can expect attrition rate to go down by this much. If you do B, you expect attrition rate to go by this much. So basically, this difference between analysis and analytics is larger, draws a larger picture about the analytics journey, because if you add analysis plus analytics, that's the journey of HR analytics, right? So HR analytics is equal to A plus A, which is analysis plus analytics. Very, very important in terms of having this understanding in human resource analytics, right? Okay, great. So now let's talk about matrix. I think matrix is something that makes the whole idea of analytics very, very measurable. That's the idea of matrix, that go about measuring anything and everything. So let's talk about what matrix is, and let's then take some examples. And let's then take some examples, and then let's talk about how exactly matrix is creating the magic that we are talking about and helping organizations make better decisions, right? So when we talk about matrix, let's understand that matrix is nothing but measure of any business activity. Any business activity that is happening, if you're going to measure it, we are talking about it being a metric, right? People are leaving the company, and these people have to be replaced. This is employee turnover or employee churn or attrition in a more slangish language. You are measuring that, wonderful. That's nothing but a metric. People are being absent, and they're being more absent of a particular department, or more specific to a manager, or more specific to the organization itself, or a particular location itself. We are talking about measuring that business activity is nothing but a metric, right? A lot of offers were made to employees, prospective employees to candidates. A lot of people didn't join. On the joining date, you had hardly 20% people joining in. Offer drop rate is nothing but a metric. Any business activity that you are measuring, is a metric, right? So the whole idea of metric is to measure a big business activity, which is very, very important, right? Now, while measuring any business activity, so basically you aim at creating a measurable deck or a formula that through which you will measure that business activity. For example, if we talk about offer drop rate, then number of people who finally joined divided by total number of offers made. So this is the metric. This is what the formula looks like, right? When we are talking about, let's say, NPS, which is Net Promoter Score, which is a very, very important element, which means how many people would refer this company to others. A very important criteria about talks volumes in terms of employee happiness and employee engagement, right? So if how many people are your promoter and how many people are your detractor, and how many people actually don't care, which means number of promoters and number of detractors and number of passives, right? So if we talk about NPS formula, we are talking about number of promoter minus number of detractor by total number of people who responded to the NPS quiz, NPS survey, right? That's the formula for net promoter score. So the moment you go about creating a formula, for example, when we are talking about time to productivity, we are talking about your time on which a person is declared productive as per performance standard of the company minus the joining date of the employee. That is nothing but a matrix. So basically, you are creating formulas, and it's not necessary that all these formulas are something like a plus b whole square, which is a square plus b square plus 2ab, which you already get. You may have to go about creating a lot of formulas as well. But the purpose is to measure a business activity, which is very, very important for us to understand, right? And the moment we have this clarity, the moment we have this understanding that, and different businesses can have completely different business activities as well, right? So it's not necessary that what is true for business A is absolutely true for business B as well. Business B may have different processes, different systems, and different things to measure on. But when we are aiming at measuring business activity, we are largely talking about applying matrix. And matrix is nothing but larger formulas that we go about to track how business activity is happening. Now, while we are doing this, one thing that we have to keep in mind, and I reiterate this, one thing that we have to keep in mind is the goal in, right? The goal in mind should be to link measuring of business activity to the larger performance that the organization wants to track, right? So organization would have done this whole organization-wise exercise of breaking, whether through balanced scorecard or through some other methodology, but they would have done this in terms of breaking the whole element down from top to bottom, which means they would have set organizational goals, and then they would have set departmental goals, and then they would have set team goals, and then they would have set individual goals. So matrix should be in line, because so a lot of times this is the problem when we go and consult with organizations, when we are, and in fact, even with best of companies, right? When we are going and interacting and we are talking to HR professionals in there, we see that either people are not aware of analytics in terms of matrix and how exactly it gets tracked, or if they are aware, they're looking at measuring anything and everything. So there is too much of measurement, but there is absolutely no clarity in terms of what to relate to bring back to the business what matters to them, right? So what matters to them end of the day is the goals that they have gone about setting. So whenever you go about tracking business activity, ask this question to yourself, that is it in line with the larger goals that the team, the individual, the department, the organization wants to achieve? It's a very, very important thing which people miss on. So this is something that you have to absolutely remember, right? Now, what are the types of matrix? So you have primary metric and secondary metric. Primary is the first level of metric. Secondary is the second level of metric. Primary metric it aims at measuring the essence of what you want to measure, and secondary metric creates a second level of understanding which helps us identify patterns and trends, right? Now, just quickly to get into this, when we talk about a primary metric, we are talking about, let's say, turnover rate, which is nothing but employee churn or attrition rate. And then we are talking about primary metric being more specific. So a lot of times generic metric will give you an overall idea, but overall idea will not give you enough information, right? So you need to dig deeper into it. So when we talk about digging deeper into it, we are talking about it becoming more specific and it becoming more targeted. So if you are looking at turnover rate and if we talk about decrease in turnover, then we are being more specific, and we are also linking it to the ultimate goal. So for example, if organization decided that let's track reduce the turnover from 18% to 12%, and then you are applying metric to department or to manager or to as in whole, and you're tracking decrease in turnover, then that's a better thing to do rather than just measuring the turnover rate, right? And it should also be targeted. So what you can play around with the primary metric in terms of it being generic or specific or targeted, but the more specific and more targeted you make it and more in line with goals you make it, it's a better thing to do. So when we talk about, let's say, for example, it being targeted, so then you make it specific to, let's say, a group of people or a department or a manager or somebody else, right? For example, decrease in turnover of our top performers. Who are top performers? People who have been rated outstanding and exceptional in first year of their tenure in sales department. So that is something that we talk about when it comes to primary metric. Secondary metric, as I said, it helps you identify trends, patterns, etc. So when we are talking about, let's say, people leaving the organization, employee turnover, it can be for various reasons. It can be because of location, it can be because of manager, it can be because of trainer. So for example, number of people turnover whose distance from office is more than 10 kilometers. It's an important metric. Why not, right? I mean, in certain cities in the world, when we are talking about 10 to 15 kilometers may take 1.5 to 2 hours to travel, and that's too much one way, right? So you're spending, so that may be a reason for people not to join in, or it might be specific to a manager, or it might be specific to age group, or might be specific to a gender, right? For example, organizations may realize that absenteeism rate in women in age group 28 to 35 is more, largely because of childcare issues or whatever be the reason. But unless you do not apply a secondary metric, you would not be able to identify why it is happening. You would be able to identify through primary metric what is happening, but without applying secondary metric, you will not get to know why it's happening, right? So when people talk about components, top 3 reasons of people quitting, and top 3 reasons of people being absent, and top 5 reasons of what makes a place attractive place, etc., it is largely when you apply secondary metric and you see the pattern or you see the trend, and that is something that helps you identify the entire thing, right? Now, this is the introduction to metric. So largely what I have done is, I mean, there is much more to metric, and in benefit of time, I think I will have to quickly make it more applicable to you in terms of how it gets applied. But this is our first level of understanding that we can create about metrics in HR analytics, a very, very important integral part, which aims at measuring business activity, gets linked to the organizational goals and the departmental goals or the team goals. And it is something that can have 2 levels. Level 1 is to, which is primary, is to measure the essence of what we are aiming at measuring, and level 2 is to understand the pattern and the trend around the primary metric in terms of how what's impacting it and getting deeper into it, right? So this is how we go about creating metric and applying metric. Now, when we talk about, let's say, it getting applied in departments and it getting examples around it. So for example, as I said, you can say that primary metric is turnover rate, but when we talk about secondary metric, you can make it age specific, which is turnover rate of millennials, turnover rate of manager, turnover rate of male, female, etc. And all this is important input for us to gauge, to understand, and to solve the problem that business is facing. Now, what I would do here is that with this understanding of metric, I would get into a vertical and I would see what metrics exist there and how exactly it helps us map the entire process of a particular HR department. This is what I would try doing that. So let's talk about talent acquisition as a vertical, and then let's talk about how metrics can help us track anything and everything in talent acquisition, which is very, very important, right? So let's quickly talk about this. So when we talk about talent acquisition, now the idea of talent acquisition being different from recruitment is very, very evident, because recruitment is the process of recruiting, right? However, talent acquisition is the process of recruiting talent, right? So there is a difference between that. It means when we talk about talent acquisition, you cannot stop measurement. For example, in recruitment, you can stop measuring the activity with a closure of a position. But in talent acquisition, you would not stop measuring the business activity or the TA activity in terms of a position being closed. It would go up to job success, right? So there is a big difference in recruitment and talent acquisition, which is very, very important for us to understand. And the best we can understand is by differentiating between recruitment and talent acquisition, which is very, very important. So the outcome of a good recruitment is talent getting acquired, right? And from a competency terminology, I think talent acquisition truly represents the outcomes that we are aiming at achieving for an organization, right? So with this understanding, so I've just created a basic understanding about talent acquisition, which is important, which is to move ahead to have better understanding in terms of how we deal with metrics and what magic it creates when it comes to talent acquisition analytics, right? Now, when we talk about, if you have to break it down of what we aim at measuring in talent acquisition, I think we need to measure efficiency of our recruitment process and effectiveness of our recruitment process and impact of our business process, right? Our recruitment process or talent acquisition process, right? Now, Deloitte has a model around this, right? If you look at this framework that Deloitte has created in terms of talent acquisition, this is what it says. It says that talent acquisition is not only about closing a position. Talent acquisition is about having efficiency, effectiveness, and impact in terms of hiring, in terms of the quality, and in terms of that quality having the business outcomes, right? So efficiency in terms of hiring is one part of talent acquisition, which focuses on volume, time, cost, and source. When we talk about effectiveness, it focuses on quality of candidates that have been hired. And when we talk about impact, which means impact on work, impact on business, right? It is talking about how talent acquisition has impacted business outcomes, right? So now keeping this in mind, keeping this framework in mind, which is, I agree to this framework completely because they have very, very well put the entire process of talent acquisition, right? It is much more than recruitment. If you can see, for example, if it was only recruitment, then largely it would get done with all of efficiency and half of effectiveness. But then it goes beyond that and it takes effectiveness and impact, which means finally people who have been hired have been able to create any business impact or not, gives us the entire picture. So the slide that you're seeing right now is telling us the entire process of talent acquisition from start till end. Now let's talk about metrics again. Now, when we talk about metrics, we should have, now let's say you have to measure talent acquisition effectiveness. So the whole process of talent acquisition is something that you have to go about mapping, right? And then when we go about mapping, what all metrics then are needed to map this entire talent acquisition thing, which is talking about efficiency and effectiveness and impact. So let's go about doing that. So talent acquisition can have a lot of metrics, right? For example, cost per hire, candidate experience, offer acceptance rate, percentage of open positions, application completion rate, sourcing channel effectiveness, sourcing channel cost, application per opening, selection ratio, time to fill, time to hire, time to productivity, source of hire, first year attrition, quality of hire, hiring satisfaction, candidate job satisfaction or alignment, speed of competency, employee happiness index. There can be many, and there can be many more as well. But then if we are looking at all these metrics, these are all random metrics, right? But to make sense of it, right, and to really be able to align this with goals that we are looking at tracking, right, pre-hiring and a person who joins and post-hiring, I think it can be wonderfully aligned, right? And then it would not only help us track the whole process or individuals who are associated, it would also help us chase goals. For example, if you're looking at reducing cost if you're looking at improving productivity, if you're looking at reducing time, whatever we are looking at doing that, I think this whole thing, if mapped well in terms of business activity through metrics, it would make much more sense to us, right? So for example, if we have to break these things down, then efficiency metrics, now we are talking about efficiency, effectiveness and impact, which is mapping the entire TA process when it comes to talent acquisition. Such an important aspect of human resource and analytics now getting applied to it. We are talking about efficiency metrics. Some of the efficiency metrics that you can go about tracking is application completion rate or candidates per hire, or fill rate, or time to hire, or offer acceptance rate, or sourcing channel cost and yield ratio. Now, all this input in efficiency would help you dig deeper into what's going right and what's going wrong in the process, and why things are going wrong, and understanding pattern. Because the moment this is primary metric, the moment you apply secondary metric, you will get to see patterns, and you will be able to see why or what, and get the right answers to making the process more efficient by applying these metrics. The same thing when it comes to effectiveness metrics. Effectiveness metrics can be recruitment funnel effectiveness in terms of the kind of funnel that you created and how effective it has been. Sourcing channel effectiveness. Sourcing channel can be anything, right? You can hire from employee referrals, you can hire from placement consultants, you can hire from job sites, you can hire from job fairs, you can hire from by newspaper ads or digital marketing or anything, right? So how effective that has been is something that you would be able to track. Or speed of competency of candidate, which means how good the person is in terms of learning. Now that also is something that is an effectiveness metric. You may have to interact with the L&D department, but that is something that's an important metric in terms of mapping people in terms of speed of competency. And candidate assessment and deployment, which means whether a person, important metric in terms of not only assessing the candidate, but also deploying and how the person is scored successfully against the job criteria, right? Or time to productivity. I already gave you a formula for time to productivity in terms of from your internal performance standard, the day when the person was proved productive minus the date of joining of person. So for example, we are talking about today being 25th, and if a person was hired on 25th of August, and today on doing performance assessment, you realize that he meets the performance criteria as set by you or your organization, then it has taken 30 days for, as the time to productivity for a candidate, right? Similarly, hiring manager satisfaction is an effectiveness metric where we are talking about manager being happy with the hire and giving a good feedback. Now, this is effectiveness metric, right? And when we have consulted with organizations, even organizations which have a robust talent acquisition process, they largely measure efficiency and effectiveness metrics, right? But then impact metrics can also be measured, which is very interesting, isn't it, right? So whatever we talked in terms of efficiency, if it is largely a recruitment process, and I would like to differentiate between recruitment and talent acquisition in terms of making a point, is that when we talk about recruitment, efficiency metrics are important only, right? But when we talk about talent acquisition, a lot of organizations, they do is that they measure efficiency and effectiveness metrics. However, some of them ignore impact metrics, which should not be ignored according to CHRMP. And whenever we work with organizations and whenever we consult with organizations and whenever we provide solution to organization, we tell them to go a step ahead, because that would be the true judge of your entire talent acquisition process. So when you talk about tracking impact metrics, then metrics like quality of hire or job alignment or attrition, which is first year attrition largely. And when we talk about job success or project completion rate as measure of impact metrics, right? So if you look at this, what we have just done, and this is very important, guys, right? And any doubts, any questions that you have, I will take it towards the end of the webinar. Don't worry about that, right? But then what we have just done is look at how we have broken down an entire department function, right, within HR. It's not an easy thing what we have done, or what we have understood at least, right? If we have not done, is that we have broken down, and one of the most important departments in HR, which is talent acquisition, we have broken down it into phases and applied matrix at 3 stages to track anything and everything that happens in that department, right? Anything and everything that happens in that department can be tracked. And imagine if this data in terms of graphs, of charts, and through data visualization tools, if you have understanding of this and you present it back to the business, saying that what has worked, what has not worked, what has improved, what has not improved. You're not talking in terms of gut-based decision making at all. Achha, this is not working, let's try this. Achha, this did not happen in the budget of recruitment, digital response is not good, invest in newspaper ads. No, we are not talking about that. I think if we are talking about sourcing channel effectiveness, if we are talking about linking sourcing channel effectiveness to quality of hire and to first year iteration, by having visibility and overlaps of the matrix of efficiency and effectiveness and impact and how we have gone about tracking it, I think the kind of visibility that we have of what's working in the organization is huge. And then achieving organizational ultimate goal in terms of reducing time to hire and cost to hire and a lot of other things would be so very easy, right? I hope you're able to understand this, because these 3 elements in being broken down and being measured, I think you have absolutely been able to crack it for the talent acquisition department, which is very, very important, right? And matrix has its applications. I mean, I will probably pick 1 or 2 or 3 metrics just to show how matrix gets applied. But the larger point is this, that look at what we have just understood. We have understood this whole process of tracking any and every business activity and making it meaningful to largely what organization wants to achieve in an organization, which is simply wonderful, right? So for example, when we talk about application, let's pick up 2 or 3 metrics. Let's say application completion rate. Now, when we talk about application completion rate, how is it measured? It is application completed versus all completion started. Largely, it means that on your e-platform or other platform, when people start filling in the application form, so many people start it, but not everybody completes it. If you have low application completion rate, this means your candidate is frustrated with your application process in platform, resulting in abandonment of a job application. So you can identify the reasons and you can go about correcting it. It may be because of long application process or poor structure or personal questions or sensitive information being asked or technical issue with the platform. Now you are able to absolutely track it, which is awesome, right? Think about it, right? If you are able to, if you have this visibility of application completion route, you can dig deeper and you can go about diagnosing and solving the problem, right? And that is the secondary metric that you would apply and you would be able to track that, right? Fill rate, for example, total job fills versus total job assigned, right? So if somebody has been assigned a department or individual or anybody else and how many jobs have been filled, it gives you higher completion status. It gives you departments and job opening performances. It gives you internal versus external data to fill the position. It gives you candidate dropout reasons. You get to know all of it, right? If we talk about, let's say, for example, candidates per hire. So number of candidates that were interviewed for hire. Now where can you apply this? You can talk about quality of candidates in terms of how ratings were done. You can get to know input of interview process, managers' capability, time spent saved in interviewing. It is something that you can go about doing. For example, one of the elements that we realized, we were working with one of big multinationals, and we were tracking candidate per hire, and through candidate per hire and time to hire, we realized that a lot of hiring managers were spending a lot of time, for example, 30 minutes, 25 minutes, 45 minutes sometimes, right? And after 25, 30, 45 minutes, they were rejecting the candidates, right? So now this is very strange. I tell you why, because if a rejection has to be made, it could be done in first 10 minutes or first 15 minutes. But if you are taking 25 minutes to figure out, or 30 minutes to figure out, or 45 minutes to figure out that you don't need this candidate, this is absolute wastage of time for the company, right? And also in terms of other difficulty that comes across. So then a whole solution was designed on when we tracked this and when we understood that this was a problem by metric, we understood this, then we were able to track it and we were able to understand that it is largely because of this. So the whole hiring team were improved on through a training initiative, which was largely in terms of equipping them with BEI, behavioral event interviewing, the competency-based interviewing techniques, and then they were able to reduce the time, which was much more than what otherwise it would take, and that solved the problem for them, right? So basically, the idea is that metric would finally give you not only the entire picture, it would break down the whole process and give you that picture, and not only it would break down that picture, it can also zero down on with absolute microscopic view, and then broadening it and magnifying it in terms of where the problem lies, and then solving it for you, right? This is huge because this kind of clarity would otherwise backed with data. So, and this is not like, again, as I said, not perception based or anything. It is backed with data in terms of how exactly you would go about tracking this and doing this, right? Very interesting. Everyone with me? All of you are understanding? You are following what I'm saying? If you're liking the session, please type yes and type a yes in caps. A yes in caps, guys. Hope you're enjoying the session. If you're liking it, keeps me motivated. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great, 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 great. Wonderful. So now this is what we have covered so far. We have busted some myths, right? We have then talked about what is the difference between analysis and analytics, and how the entire analytics journey is nothing but analysis getting added to analytics. And then we have talked about metrics, and we have talked about primary and secondary metric, and then we have taken a department completely, and we have understood how metrics can crack anything from top to bottom completely on this. This is a very important takeaway. Now I will move to from talent acquisition, I'll move to something else as a case discussion, and I will move to another amazing thing that metric does, right? And that amazing metric thing that metric does is ROI calculations, right? So when we talk about ROI calculations, now this is what happens with ROI calculations, right? And this is what we have been having an understanding on all this while being in HR, right? Is that ROI should be calculated after any initiative is done, right? Which means, let's say you did a training initiative and now you have to go about calculating the ROI. That is how we have gone about seeing. But here we would look at how ROI with better data analysis can help us predict. It can help an organization predict whether they should go ahead with the training initiative or a training process or not, which is again very, very interesting, right? So when we talk about ROI calculation, how is ROI calculated? The metric for ROI calculation is simple. ROI is net benefit divided by total cost into 100. How do you calculate net benefit? Net benefit is total benefit minus total cost. So whatever is your total benefit, when you minus total cost from it, you get net benefit. Net benefit divided by total cost into 100 is your ROI. Now we will do one simple calculation, and I would need your participation in this. What would be the ROI? Now this is a Harappan horse. If you buy an original one, will cost you millions of dollars, but this is a replica. You bought it for $100 and you sold it for $250. What would be the ROI, right? ROI formula is net benefit divided by total cost. Net benefit divided by total cost into 100, right? How do you calculate net benefit? You calculate net benefit as total benefit minus total cost, right? Please type your answers here. I'm waiting for it. Total benefit minus total cost is your net benefit. Net benefit divided by total cost is your ROI, right? So what's the answer? 150. Wonderful. Yes, the answer is 150. Very, very easy, right? How? This is how exactly it's done. Net benefit is total benefit. What is your total benefit? Total benefit is $250. That's what your total benefit you get. So how do you calculate net benefit? 250 minus $100, right? That is total benefit minus total cost. So 250 minus 100 is $150, and the total cost is $100. So ROI is $150 divided by 100. into 100, and it is 150%. It is 150%, right? So this is how total ROI is done for this one simple thing, right? But now, if we dig deeper into it, and if we have an understanding in terms of calculating ROI in a given business scenario where data has been collected, and we want to make it preemptive in terms of deciding whether they should go ahead with something or not. Look at this data, and now let's try calculating ROI and also advising the business, right, in whether they should go ahead with this or not. So it says a long-term training program is expected to reduce absenteeism by 10% for your company. It is reducing absenteeism by 10% of the company. Total absenteeism cost is given $10,20,000. Hiring a trainer would cost you $25,000 per annum. These are all per annum figures, and additional overall cost will give you $5,000. A total of 15 managers will participate in this training for 8 hours a month for 12 months. Average pay for a manager is $60, and then benefit for absenteeism, very important statement, benefit of absenteeism would be seen for up to 3 years. So we have to calculate total benefit, and then we have to calculate net benefit, and we have to calculate total cost, and that's how you calculate ROI. So let's first calculate total cost. Let's have a visibility of total cost, then have visibility of total benefits. If we have these two visibilities, we'll calculate net benefit, and we'll be able to calculate the answer. So let's quickly calculate total cost. What is total cost? Total cost is nothing but trainer cost, which is $25,000, and 15 managers are attending 8 hours training for 12 months, right? 8 hours of training per month for 12 months. So 15 into 8 into 12, and their per hour salary on an average is $60, right? So 15 into 8 into 12 into 60, which is $86,400, and additional cost is $5,000. So now you have total cost is $1,16,400. Total cost is $1,16,400. Now let's calculate total benefit. There are two statements about benefit that is given. First statement is in the first paragraph, which says that a long-term training program is expected to reduce absenteeism by 10%, and cost of absenteeism is given. So total cost of absenteeism is 10,20,000. You are reducing it by 10%. So 10% into 10,20,000 is 1,02,000 per year. And the second last paragraph, it's given that benefit will last for up to 3 years, which means this 1,02,000. Now this is a long-term program. Program is happening for 12 months. It's expected to benefit the organization for about 3 years. So 1,02,000 gets multiplied by 3. So it becomes 3,06,000. So now your total benefit is $3,06,000. Your total cost is $1,16,400. So what is your net benefit? Your net benefit is total benefit minus total cost. So 3,06,000 minus 1,16,400. So your net benefit is 1,89,600. And now you can calculate the ROI as net benefit divided by total cost, which is 1,89,600 divided by 1,16,400 into 100. And that is 162.88%, right? Would you advise the business to go ahead with this investment or not? What do you think, guys? If your answer is yes, please type yes. If your answer is no, please type no, right? What do you think? What would be your advice be? Should they go ahead with this investment in training, or they should not go ahead with this investment in training? Please type Y or N or yes or no in the chat box. Wonderful. Great. Lot of yeses. Yes, you are absolutely right. A business should absolutely advise, the HR department should absolutely advise, the analytics should absolutely advise the business to go ahead with this investment, because we are expecting a 162.88% return. We are expecting 62.88% return. This is awesome, isn't it? Right? So when we talk about HR analytics, this is what metrics can do for you, right? And there are a lot of other things in HR analytics. I mean, the HR analytics is huge. One part is metric, and today's topic is metric. But imagine what we are able to do. We are able to map an entire organization's every business activity, and we can then relate it to where the problem is. It's like, you know, this entire blood test report that is in front of you that the doctor sees, and then says that, okay, the platelet count is low, and the cholesterol is high, and the LDL is this and this. So absolutely, he's then able to advise you what to eat, what not to eat, to rest, not to rest. You are able to suggest the solution to a patient, the same way HR analytics, by breaking it down, by measuring every business activity, by tracking everything, is able to advise the business. Now remember this, guys, right? If all of you are in HR And if you are even aspiring HR professional, all this while what HRs have been doing is largely executing what business tells them to execute. You have been executing what business tells you to execute. But unlike this, I think what is happening with HR analytics is that they are getting into strategy mode, because you are now giving solutions to business, you're giving advice to business. So if you're advising the business, go ahead with this training because the ROI looks good. It is backed with data, not with perception. And this is advising, not executing only, right? It is advising, which is at a different level altogether in terms of your organization, isn't it? Right? So this is what is happening in the world today, right? Every $1 spent on analytics, now whether it's HR analytics, whether it's business analytics, whether it's customer analytics, is giving business back $13. So analytics is the next big thing, because the key differentiator between top companies would be how well database decisions I am able to take for the entire organization, and especially for customer interactive roles, and especially for HR departments, because that's driving our manpower and our productivity levels and our cost levels and a lot of other things, right? So because this is the input they're getting, 1300% return they're giving, organizations have made it a point. I mean, key differentiator between top organizations would be how well they have done their analytics. And that's why if people who aim at working with best of organizations, I think HR analytics is very, very important, right? Future of HR analytics, this is the data that, and this is pre-pandemic, pre-COVID data, guys, right? I mean, I'm sure if this is done now, it would be different, because you cannot imagine the kind of digital transformation companies have gone about seeing, and the kind of new data that HRs are sitting on right now in last 7 months, in last 8 months of pandemic, right? And the pre-pandemic, Feb suggested that 7 out of 10 HR roles by 2025 would need analytics knowledge. 7 out of 10. So irrespective of departments that you belong to or work that you do. And 68% of MNCs, 68% of organizations that people dream of being part of, right, will have a dedicated HR analytics COE, which means they will have a dedicated center of excellence for HR analytics. So the opportunity is huge. And the challenge is that there are not enough skilled people in HR analytics. There is not enough skilled people in HR analytics. And that brings me to this very, very important point, which is that in every crisis lies an opportunity. The world is in crisis today. I don't think in our living memory, anybody has seen the time that we are seeing today world over. It would have been country specific, but what the world over is seeing is something which is absolute crisis. And if we have to go about seeing where does the opportunity lie, right? A lot of times people who are working, they come back and say that, okay, I don't know what to do because there is nothing much that's happening. Career is stalled. People have lost jobs. This has happened, that has happened. Other people who were working with me have moved ahead, all this, right? And I think people who have been able to identify where opportunity lies have been able to accelerate their career, right? And the way to do it is to stand out, right? And I always again stress on this point whenever I conduct a webinar, is that the way you can have a great career, the way you can have an awesome career is in human resource, especially, is to stand out. What you have to offer. Now, if you ask this question to yourself, what am I offering to an organization, right? And what is the worth of this offer? So if you are happy with the current worth, then it's all good, right? But then if you're not happy with the salary, and if you're not happy with the kind of organization that you're working with or the role that you're working with, then what you're offering has to also change, because what you offer is finally accepted, isn't it, right? So it's important that you are able to identify in this time of crisis where the world is heading in human resource at least, right? And you are able to master the next gen skill, which is very, very important. Analytics definitely is that next gen skill. And when we talk about strategic HR, which is into consulting and solutioning, it is largely being driven by human resource business partner and HR analytics coming together, right? So a large part of it is HR analytics, because evidence-based HR practices, data-driven HR practices are purely because of HR analytics. So solutioning and consulting will be largely driven by HR analytics, right? So if you invest in self, if you master the next gen skill, and if you get into solutioning and consulting role, I think you stand out and you become so valuable that you become invaluable. And that is the way forward. So if in this crisis situation, if you're able to upskill, if you're able to master a skill, and if you're able to gain this perspective and this knowledge, then you are much better prepared for what lies in the future, because you have future skills, which is very, and you build on those skills. It's not that this knowledge will be lost, right? You will build on these skills. If you started your career in HR, whichever knowledge you had, you were only able to build it on this, isn't it, right? So this is very important for us to understand this, right? That the way to stand out, right? The way to work and better our career for future, right? I mean, I'm sure software engineers 10 years back, 20 years back, chose software, or telecom engineers chose 4G or 5G as a conscious decision five years back to probably now be CEOs, CTOs, or project heads or HODs, because they invested in something which was the next gen skill. And in HR, next gen is HR analytics completely. So to help you stand out, I have something very good to offer you, and that is CHRMP certification in HR analytics. I think one of the well-crafted certification programs, which has workshop, which has capstone project, which has exposure to tools, which has validation. And all this is something that comes to you in a 12-week learning journey, where right from introduction to HR analytics, where you understand and appreciate internal and external data, understand differentiate between HR analytics, people analytics, workforce analytics, and all those elements, and understand how HR analytics fits into the organization, to tools and implementation, where you learn maturity model, SAP model, Deloitte model, Gartner model, capability model, number of models that you go about learning. You learn how analytics journey works. You learn what all can be analyzed. There is a very interesting case study that we do in here in module 2. Then you have talent acquisition analytics, part of it with what we covered today, but the whole idea of getting deeper into understanding efficiency, effectiveness, and impact, and tracking that and its application. And one wonderful case study that we do here is of Google case study. And then we have workload analysis, where we understand utilization time, realization time, full-time equivalence, etc. Now, this is very interesting because workload analysis is all about, so all this while, how is recruitment happening? Business comes and tells people, I need 10 people, hire it for me by this timeline. But now you're not doing that in workload analysis. You're saying, okay, you are telling me 10 people need to be hired. Do you need 10 people? Okay, let me do a workload analysis for you. And then they do workload analysis and they realize that the team is already fat, but you need a fit culture. So basically you tell them that you don't need 10 people. Maybe you need to let go of 2 people, or 2 people need to go somewhere else, right? So, and this is all, and one of the case studies that we do here, you are actually able to do it. You are able to reduce through analytics headcounts and through workload analysis, which is very, very important. It's not that we want to reduce headcount, but it's just that we bring this to business, and this is very important for us to understand, right? How exactly it comes. And then we have KPI and performance management analytics, where we talk about cascading effect, pest analysis, we talk about KPI, we talk about BSE, we talk about lead lag, and how HR scorecards are organization scorecards, and how HR scorecards then get connected with HR matrix, and HR analytics is something that you go about learning. And then you learn on talent development analytics. We teach you RTCA, role task competency analysis. We teach you triangulation. We introduce you to a tool called Results Lab, does Kirkpatrick L3, L4 level evaluation. Wonderful that is there. And there are some wonderful cases and activities that you do here. You learn how to do succession planning, where the BSc Connect, you see potential and performance charting you do. All that is something that you learn. And then you learn employee engagement analytics, where you learn ELTV, you learn employee life cycle mapping, you learn absenteeism, attrition, and cost and measuring and tracking and reducing. All that is something that you go about learning. And then you learn compensation analytics, something new to 4 months back. This was not there, but now it's there as part of analytics. We constantly keep updating our curriculum. So here you learn internal equity, external equity, individual equity, grade range. You learn how competency scorecards are created and how they get mapped with job roles, and then how this whole thing is populated in terms of compensation metrics for the organization, which is really awesome using analytics. And then you learn data and metrics, one session which goes beyond the specified number of hours. Always we have participants from different parts of the world. So we have people from Australia and people from Saudi and Dubai and Qatar and India and Bangladesh and Kabul and Afghanistan and Philippines and Nairobi and Nigeria and Kenya and Botswana. So it's a very interesting group and batch, and you see people telling them, no, give us more time because we really want to do this, and sometimes it goes beyond 1.5 hours more because people really want to implement this because they find it so very interesting. And then not only that, we top it up by making you learn this data visualization tool called Tableau, which is also one of very effective tools that you need to have, right? So that is something that you learn how to create this amazing looking dashboards and how to represent data, how to present data. All that is something that is taught to you, right? And then there is validation from CHRMP and Pearson View. That is something that you go about getting a global certification in HR. We give you a blockchain verified digital badge in HR analytics. You get a certificate of Just give me a moment. There is some minor issue with the network. Just need a minute from you. Yes, so I'm sharing my screen again. So yes, so if you look at just a second. Yeah, so I have something very exciting for all of you, and I quickly want to share that. And if you look at, yes, so this is what we were talking about. Yeah, so you get a certificate of achievement. Look at what people have to talk about the certification. Very good profiles from very good organizations have gone about doing this certification, and they have wonderful things to say about CHRMP. And the best part is that the analytics certification starts this 14th of November. You can start your journey and you can ring in the new year with a much needed niche certification in analytics. That is something that you can go about doing, right? Go to our website, chrmp.com, www.chrmp.com, and you can register yourself for this certification. That is something that you can go about doing, right? And I thank you again, everyone, for attending this webinar. Any doubts, any questions anyone has? Just go to chrmp.com. I'm just typing it in the chat box. Go to future ready certifications. You will be able to see CHRMP, and I'm sure you would find it useful as you go about doing certification. Yeah. Any doubts, any questions, anyone? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. I hope you found it useful, and I hope to see you there.